This week in Texas, we sit down with the new chair of the Democratic National Committee as he makes a multi-state swing to rally his troops after a disappointing 2024 election cycle.
I don't know how in the hell changing the name of the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America helps working people in this country.
And we look at one of the big issues of the 2024 election, the border and immigration. Daniela Hurtado reports from the Texas-Mexico border.
They lost the part, but look what they gained, security.
Plus, a conversation with our political insiders about Governor Greg Abbott's social media push for school choice. This week in Texas. Hello again and welcome. This week in Texas, we begin with Governor Greg Abbott. As we've reported on this program before, Governor Abbott named 7 emergency items in his State of the State address earlier this month. Among them was school choice. And over the past week, he has been busy on social media pushing for the measure that would send public money to private schools. You may recall, he made school choice a priority for the past 2 sessions. He called 4 special sessions in 2023 to get it passed, but it failed. Then he spent a lot of money campaigning against Republicans who would not support it, and now it seems he has the votes to get it passed. But he's not only defending the policy, he's attacking those fighting against it.
When Governor Abbott delivered his State of the State address 2 weeks ago, he got a standing ovation when he mentioned school choice.
We must pass school choice this session.
Days later, the Texas Senate passed SB 2, the Education Savings Account bill that would allocate $1 billion to the state's surplus, a plan that would give public money to homeschoolers and private schools to offset those expenses. But it's not a done deal. The House has never passed its own version of what critics call vouchers that they say would hurt already underfunded public schools. And as the session moves into full swing, Abbott is making a full court press to get it across the finish line. Between last Tuesday and Sunday, Governor Abbott tweeted about school choice 32 times between his personal and government account. 9 of them were from his official account on the social media platform X, in which he defended the policy. But it was on his personal account where he went on the attack. Among his deluge of posts, reposts, and replies, he called one critic, a state rep who is the vice chair of the House Higher Education Committee and a Ph.D., a fake doctor. He responded to former gubernatorial candidate Beto O'Rourke's criticism about Texans not wanting school choice by writing, "All right, you want to talk about what Texans want? Definitely not you. You are a repeat loser in Texas." It is true that polling last year and in 2023 showed a majority of Texans do support school choice. But rural Republicans have not supported it, which is why Abbott worked to defeat those who opposed it in the Texas House. And to one of those targets who called school choice a voucher grift on X, Abbott responded, "The voters spoke, Glenn. They want school choice. They didn't want you."
For more on Governor Abbott's push for school choice, we bring in our political insiders. I'm joined by political strategist Otis Evagaro and former Trump and Bush administration appointee Leonard Smearman. Gentlemen, thanks for being with us. Leonard, we'll start with you. Your thoughts about the governor's aggressive social media push for vouchers or school choice?
Well, the ESA, as it is affectionately called, is he's been at it for quite some time, and he got a lot of folks in. Congress, state representatives in to push forward his plan and program. It's a good program. It might need some tooling and some amendments, but the Senate has already approved it and sent it out, and we're now waiting on the House of Representatives to hear what they have to say about it.
So you understand his push for it, given he's been trying for some time?
Oh, yes, I understand his push, and I think the key word in my opinion is choice. He has always wanted to give, as well as Republicans, conservatives, students, and parents, the choice of what school and what kind of education they wanted for their kids.
All right, Leonard, that's your take. Otis, your take.
Yeah, Tom, you had it right the first time. It's a voucher program, and it's a $10 million investment. There's a person in Maryland who gave Governor Abbott $10 million, went to go play in the Republican primary and got rid of these House Republicans who didn't agree with the voucher program. Listen, all of those tweets is some 25, 26-year-old intern being feisty on Twitter to distract away from what's really going on. I'm from Cypress Fairbanks ISD, affectionately known as Cy-Fair. If this voucher program is passed, Cy-Fair is going to lose $46 million. Tom, I've talked to you about Cy-Fair. 21 straight years, the credit bureau, essentially for what is TEA, has given them an A rating. 21 straight years. This year, they were facing a $138 million deficit because we have not increased the basic allotment. In 2019, the basic allotment per student was $6,160. 7 years later, you know what that basic allotment is? $6,160. We have not increased school funding for public schools. Now, we want to take a big chunk of that money, put it into a voucher program because Governor Abbott wants to run for president in 2028.
Now, the governor has said that the money's not coming out of the money that would otherwise go to public schools. This is coming from the surplus. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, and that's what he said, and that's what's in the bill, too. We don't need to hear a whole lot of numbers thrown around about whether or not it's good and how much. My kids grew up in Cy-Fair, too, by the way,
good.
So I know that they finished. What has to happen is kids need a choice if their school is failing. And if their school is not failing, we'll keep them in. I would keep my kids in Cy-Fair as well, regardless of whether or not I got a $10,000 voucher to go to a private school. There's some good school districts out there. Katy is another one where I mentor 3 kids, and I look forward to doing that kind of activity. But let's not get caught up in the numbers of per kid and whatnot. We have a Department of Education that's been funding a lot of school districts and state schools that, you know, it's money, and we keep pouring it in, and our failing grades keep going down. So it's time for a change. It's time for a choice.
But with all due respect, we have to care about the numbers. The reason why you're able to say the schools are failing is because we're not adequately funding them here in the state of Texas. In this country, Texas is in the bottom third. In fact, last I checked, it's 48 out of 50 per pupil spending. We're not spending adequate enough money on kids. In New York, they spend $22,000 per kid. Here, we're at $6,160. And I would also like to mention, Governor Abbott can say all he wants to about taking money from the surplus. He said it himself, that money could be lost for public schools because of this voucher program. That's not my words. That's not your words. It's not Tom's words. That's Governor Abbott's words. So we've got to talk about the numbers. We've got to talk about the spending, because we can't keep saying that schools are failing but not looking at the root of the problem. I'm tired of these medicines for the symptoms of the disease when we're not looking at the disease. We've got to fund our public schools. You were out in Cy-Fair. It's a great school district. They are fiscally responsible. The neighborhood is invested. No way Cy-Fair just all of a sudden, after 21 straight years, is $140 million, in the red.
Gentlemen, thank you for that discussion. When we come back, we'll have a conversation with the brand new chair of the Democratic National Committee. Welcome back. After a resounding defeat in 2024, Democrats have a new leader at the Democratic National Committee. Ken Martin from Minnesota is making his first multi-state swing as the leader of the organization that determines political strategy for Democrats all over the country. Martin is visiting blue and red states on the trip, including Texas, and during his stop in Houston this week, he sat down with us to talk about his approach to the new job. Tell me why you're in Houston.
Well, look, I'm on a tour throughout the country this week. We're calling it the Organize Everywhere Tour. It's a simple premise that if we're going to win throughout this country and get back into power, we have to organize everywhere. We're visiting red states, purple states, and blue states on this tour. And Texas really is the future of the Democratic Party, right? This is such a critical battleground state for us as we move forward into the 26 elections, of course, the 28 election cycle and beyond. It's really important that we're here organizing. I've been meeting with local leaders, listening to people throughout this city today, and lots of good conversations. For me right now, it's really just listening, learning, hearing about people's experiences both in this past election and what we need to do to prepare for the future.
Here in Texas, and I think across the country, Democrats have lost some of the Hispanic vote that they could count on historically, some black vote that they could count on historically, particularly here in Texas along the valley. What do you do to regain the trust of those communities? Well, we have to earn their trust back, and part of that is by not just showing up a few months before the election and asking them for their vote. We have to get back to organizing year-round, where we're building durable trust with communities around shared values, and then we have to deliver. When we're in power, whether it's in Washington or here in Austin or other parts of this state, we actually have to deliver for our people again, because the reason we've lost ground with so many folks is that there's a great disillusionment in politics these days. People don't trust
government, they don't trust democratic institutions or political institutions, they don't trust politicians. And part of that is they don't feel like people actually give a damn about their lives or that they're going to deliver for their families. And so we actually have to make sure that we're showing up, building trust with voters again, and then when we get into power, we're actually standing up and fighting for them and their families.
So how do you change that narrative?
Well, we have to start. We just have to start working right now. You know, showing up in this year, for instance, when there aren't elections. We have to be present in community when we're not asking them for their vote. We have to actually visit local union halls again, and picnics and festivals, and be out and not just knocking on doors, but actually standing in solidarity with communities. And we actually have to, at the end of the day, if we're going to win back with folks that we've lost ground with, we actually have to stand up and fight right now. Because what we're seeing out of Washington and other parts of this country is the fact that people are being demonized, communities are being ripped apart, people are being pushed out of the conversation, and they're relying on us, the Democratic Party, to stand up and lift up their voices and to fight back against the extremes of this administration and what we've seen already. And that's part of what we also have to do. We have to show them that we care about them, we're going to fight for their families, and that means we're resisting Trump at the same time that we're present in their community.
So what are the issues specifically that you think Americans want to hear from Democrats?
Well, I think, you know, one of the disturbing things we learned last year, there was some research that showed for the first time in American history the perceptions of the two political parties has changed, and that the majority of Americans now believe the Republican Party best represents the interests of the working class and the poor. Democratic Party is a party of the wealthy and the elite. That's just a damning indictment on our party. It's not true at all. Unfortunately, that's how people feel. And so what we need to do is get back to focusing on those kitchen table issues, a working class agenda that gives people a sense that we see them. We see how hard they're working. The fact that most Americans are working harder than they ever have before, feeling like they can't get ahead, they're just barely getting by, and they feel like most politicians in both parties don't give a damn about that. And so what we have to do, as I said, is we have to focus on those kitchen table issues, focus on the policies that help improve their lives, and make sure that they know we're fighting for them and we haven't forgotten them.
So when you talk about starting that effort now, is the focus more on the issues themselves or on attacking the party that's currently in power? What's more effective?
We can walk and chew gum at the same time, and so it's not an either or, it's a both, right? When the stakes are this high for the American people right now, and what we're seeing, it would be very short-sighted for us not to stand up and fight and take on Donald Trump, Elon Musk, and J.D. Vance and what they're doing to people throughout this country. But if we just stay in that space of perpetual resistance, then the other thing we're not doing, unfortunately, is giving people a sense of who we are as the Democratic Party, what our values are, and why we care, and who we're fighting for. And we have to be able to convey to them an alternative, right? A positive vision and a hopeful vision for where this country could go if they put Democrats back in power. And so for me, it's a both end, right? We can do both. We can resist Trump and the extremes of this administration and strenuously remind folks that the promises he made about lowering prices, right, the promises he made about focusing on actually improving people's lives, have not, in the last 3 weeks, he hasn't done one single thing, not one thing, to actually help improve people's lives. I don't know how in the hell changing the name of the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America helps working people in this country. I don't know how in the hell allowing Elon Musk and his teenage band of Doge brothers running around this country under the guise of efficiency and indiscriminately laying off, you know, thousands of workers that are going to impact people's lives in a very bad way helps make a difference throughout this country. The reality is Donald Trump's focused on everything but helping people improve their lives right now. He's focused on everything but making their lives easier, and he's certainly not focused on anything that would help them get ahead. The challenge for us right now is Americans are working harder than they ever have. Harder than they ever have. And the cost of goods is still high. You remember when he said he was going to bring down the cost of groceries on day one? You haven't heard him talk about groceries since. Gas prices are high, groceries are high, people can't buy a house, they can't afford a mortgage. I mean, these are just basic necessities of life that Donald Trump doesn't give a damn about. And that's very clear in how he's governed these last 3 weeks. So we have to make sure that we call him out on that. We have to make sure that we know, let voters know and people throughout this state know that the promises he made during this election he's not delivering on. And then we have to give them a sense of what the Democratic Party is going to do to actually deliver on those promises.
Now, those kitchen table issues,
Yeah.
the economics of everyday life, are what propelled them to victory in some way, something that Democrats didn't necessarily focus on in the days leading up to the November election.
Yep.
Is this where your focus is now going into 2026, is to talk about those
This
things?
is where my focus has always been. You know, I come out of the labor movement. You know, I was the oldest son of a teenage mom who had me when she was 15 years old, 4 kids she raised. By the time she was 20, she really struggled, right? We were in and out of shelters. We knew what it was like to not have a hot meal. You know, we knew what it was like to have to look for, you know, shelter and housing. At the end of the day, we knew what it was like to struggle. And the reality is that's a lot of Americans right now who are struggling and are feeling like they just don't have a champion, feeling like no one gives a damn. People in both parties don't care that they're struggling and that they're being left behind. So this is the fight for our party right now, to give people hope that there are still people out there who will be their champion and still care about their lives.
When we come back, our political insiders return to talk about which party is more in touch with Texans and what needs to happen to remain engaged with Texas voters. Welcome back. Let's talk more about the political parties and where they are philosophically right now. I'm joined by political strategist Otis Evagaru, former Trump and Bush administration appointee Leonard Spearman. They're back with us to talk about this topic. Which party is more in touch with what Texas voters want and need? Leonard, you're deferring first to Otis because you want the last say.
No, listen, I'm always going to say Democrats are more in touch with the voters. Listen, in the state of Texas particularly, I want to localize it. We have the highest uninsured rate in the country here in Texas and leave $10 billion on the table just because of one word, Obama. For Obamacare, for the Affordable Care Act. We have inadequate public schools that are not funded because of the leadership here in the state of Texas. And we still live in a state that has a wage of $7.25 that's not livable here in the state of Texas. We've got to do better. We've got to get a livable wage. State leaders will say, hey, inflation, 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 but won't do anything to alleviate the pain of affordability that people are facing. And then affordability here. Property taxes are high. We pay more in property taxes here in Texas than we do in California, but yet you'll hear the other side say, don't California my Texas. I believe Democrats are more in tune. I know it's hard to say because we've lost for 30 straight years. I completely understand that, but Texas is trending more purple like we've talked about in previous shows than it is just being solidly ruby red.
Now, it did start to trend purple, though the last election cycle maybe pared back a little bit. Republicans had a really good 2024.
Yeah, just a tad bit.
Well, it's a lavender. But the Republicans have been in charge, and I can't imagine why businesses would want to come to Texas if they didn't think it was a good state to raise their business, bring their employees, raise their families. Yes, we do not want to Californianize Texas. I mean, I think Democrats would say that as well, too. You can't be the #1 state in business and in everything else that we are #1 in and still talk about, well, it's not a great state. Republicans have made it that way. Before Abbott, Bush. Before Bush, we had a little interruption, but Clements was strong. I worked for Governor Clements as well, and he led that charge again. He was the first Republican in over 100 years to take over, and since then, the state has gone red, and it has remained red. Now, there are some pockets that might be lavender or purple, but after Trump takes over, we'll turn back Harris and Dallas and San Antonio into a red state.
So what are the issues you think that Republicans hit on that most Americans seemed to like in 2024?
Smaller government, take care of our own. We've spent a lot of money, and we're finding that out under the DOGE report, that we have spent a lot of money that is not coming to our own citizens. Smaller government, I've been in Washington, D.C. under 3 terms, and I know there are a lot of paper pushers in Washington, D.C. They are not doing anything productive, manufacturing anything. We need to get that money back into the states so that we can have a better economy, not only for Texas, but for other states, even blue states.
or make the economy better for Elon Musk, who continually gathers more and more government contracts. Listen, after every Democratic president, this country is in a surplus. After every Republican president, we somehow end up in a deficit and the budget balloons, right? That's why you have Chip Roy there talking about cutting down spending, but his own teammates in the Republican Party are fighting him on it, right? So we've got to talk, we've got to think about some of the things that are going on here in this country. It's not specifically Texas because of the resources. And also, too, you know, we changed our nominee in August heading into a November election. I mean, that's tough for the Democratic Party. In 2022, we won the Senate. And it wasn't a bloodbath in the House like some people thought it was going to be with the majority that the Republicans had. So it's not like the country all of a sudden is just saying, oh, my goodness, look at this good old red Trump wave. Trump won the popular vote by 1.5% of the vote. So the country is a lot closer than you think. I anticipate in 2026 it swings back our way. But here specifically in Texas, talking about what needs to happen. You know, Republicans never talk about the things they're number one in, only on the business side. What about mass shootings? We're number one in the country per capita when it comes to mass shootings. We have the highest uninsured rate in the country. Like I mentioned, we still do not have a livable wage here in Texas, and this is a state of 30 million people that continually goes more and more diverse. And oh, by the way, we keep wasting money on the border on walls that have gaps this big in it.
Some final thoughts?
Yeah, the wall did help. We had 10 million people come in under the previous administration. It's not our fault that they didn't recognize that their past president wasn't good enough to run and waited till the very last minute to push another person out there to run in 180 days, I believe, or either 90 days or something along those lines. And yes, Trump is looking at making America great again. So it's no doubt that we will make it great again, and we will win in 26 as well.
Gentlemen, thank you both. We appreciate your perspective. Well, border and immigration, they have been a big part of this last election cycle. When we come back, a report from Daniela Hurtado at the Texas-Mexico border in Eagle Pass. Welcome back. Let's turn to the border and immigration, a big focus of these early days of President Donald Trump's second term. This week, the Trump administration announced new numbers from Customs and Border Protection that show a 36% drop in illegal border crossings from December to January, with apprehensions reaching their lowest number since May of 2020. Among the hot spots for crossings is Eagle Pass, Texas. It's been more than a year since the state sent National Guard troops to take over a park there along the Rio Grande as part of Operation Lone Star. That takeover has divided the community. ABC 13's Daniela Hurtado is in Eagle Pass and has more from the border.
The border wall, a symbol of physical division. Two countries divided by a fence and people divided by opinions.
I wish we had access to go back to our Shelby Park.
Eagle Pass, now one of the epicenters of immigration enforcement efforts after troops took over a popular town park, as Texas leaders said it was necessary in order to keep undocumented immigrants out.
They lost the park, but look what they gained, security.
Shelby Park was a part of Ivan Zambrano's daily walk. Today, he takes a new path, as the grounds of Shelby Park are shut off, filled with cars, troops, fences, and barbed wire.
Yeah, we lost the park temporarily. We didn't lose it forever.
Some, like Pastor Julio Vasquez, who leads a congregation in Eagle Pass, say he disagrees with the troops being here and feels they're making life harder for the people in this border community.
Por favor, retire las tropas de nuestro parque, nuestra comunidad lo necesita, ¿verdad? Entonces, mucha gente sí ha perdido la esperanza, verdaderamente ha perdido la esperanza, y dicen, ese parque ya no lo vamos a recuperar.
Vasquez is asking the government to remove the troops because their community needs their park and feels many have lost hope that they'll ever be able to enjoy it again. Like anything, people here see the border and immigration issues from different lenses. A town where many say they feel misunderstood and unheard by many across the nation.
Thanks to Daniela for that report from the Texas-Mexico border. And that does it for This Week in Texas. We appreciate you joining us. You can watch all of our previous episodes on demand wherever you stream ABC 13 or by going to our website at abc13.com. Just click the tab at the top of the screen where you'll find our program. For all of us here, I'm Tom Abrams. We hope you have a great week and be kind to one another.